the crazy stories of I spent $50,000 on a fully produced video from Amazon and it bombed. It did not do anything better than the $200 video I had some guy on Fiverr make me.
Yeah.
I think that your bar really just needs to be, am I showcasing my product? Am I giving myself the ability to run these ads? And I would just be thinking, why is somebody going to purchase from me? I know you can actually go as short as 7 seconds. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going with a 7 video. Index more on showcase your product, showcase one of your core value props, and then just go live. Because the value that you're going to get from absolute best video is going to be a lot smaller than the value you're getting from just having good enough video. Aim for good enough and get started.
How do you scale sponsored brand video ads? Well, I'm really, really excited for this conversation today. I have Mike Frekey. He is the managing partner over at IGPPC, and he's got a tip for us today that I'm super intrigued. I want to know about it. But before we get into that, Mike, do you want to just give a quick intro and backstory to yourself?
Yeah. So, hey everyone, Mike Frekey. I've been in Amazon ads for almost 10 years now. I got my start in agency land, spent 3 years over in-house at a big aggregator called Perch as their head of advertising, among other hats that I wore. And then a little over a year ago, I joined IGPPC as a managing partner, which is a very fancy title to just mean I have a wing of the agency. And if I want to do a test, we do the tests. And it's pretty much just a lot of autonomy, which is really fun, to be honest. I'm a big fan of that. So
we were talking right before this. You're saying like, oh, I have so much freedom to like really dig into the things. And I know that's how we, I think, first connected as you were talking about like forecasting, which nobody talks about, or these other like more technical, nuanced, data-driven insights, which I personally love geeking out on. So I know it's been a hot minute, which is awesome. But I'm super excited to hear what you're talking about today, which is scaling video ads, because I hear this all the time. Like a lot of sellers or brands or even other, Amazon PPC service providers, they say, okay, we need to run video ads, right? So you get your video, you throw out the ad, and then you go, great, I have video ads running, and kind of call it good. I don't think there's a lot of information in our space about like looking into the creatives or scaling or how one really like kind of builds off of what you currently have running. Like that's very standard for sponsored product ads. So it's like, all right, what are the search terms? How do we build off of this? How do we scale these? But not so much for sponsored brands video. Do you want to just give us like a lay of the land on maybe a little bit of the strategy and we can dig into it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll first just say philosophically, I'm a very big believer, scale out your sponsored product ads first. Generally speaking, you're going to find the most meat on the bone products. You have the most possible ad spots. The vast majority of sales on Amazon take place in ads that look like organic listings. So if you're not what you're doing on sponsored products, scaling sponsored brand videos probably isn't necessarily going to be where you should be focusing your efforts. But assuming that you are just looking for those additional areas to grow. Hello, Garth. My new cat says hi. Assuming you're looking for additional areas to grow, I think sponsored brand videos can be a really compelling area that I've found personally to run as efficiently at greater volumes than standard sponsored brand or definitely sponsored display, assuming you're still looking at reasonable attribution of like CPC and CPM.
Yeah. Ask you just real quick, when you say at scale, is that there's more inventory you found, the performance tends to be better? What is it about sponsored brands video versus headline that you found to work better?
The number one metric is conversion rate. I usually find better conversion rates on sponsored brand video for like to like terms. So you can find amazing headline conversion rates when all you're advertising on is your own brand name. Right? If you're focusing on more of the, I call as discovery terms, things that are not tied to your brand name or a competitor brand name. When you are focusing on discovery targeting, so you're not trying to defend your own brand name, you're not trying to attack a competitor brand name, and you're more finding people who are searching and trying to find who is what product am I actually trying to buy? Because I don't actually know who I want to buy.
Yeah.
Those ads end up converting a lot better on sponsored brand video than they do on headline ads. And in my mind, I'm going to call it, there's 1.5 reasons for this. The first one is just the actual landing page experience. I think storefront landing pages inherently are a significantly worse user experience or customer experience than a standard product detail page. Because if you think of the average Amazon shopper, if they've purchased anything, they know what it is like to go onto a product detail page and then make it versus I think you still have plenty of people who have probably never even been on a storefront page to begin with. And then even if you do, it ends up usually being more of an experience of, okay, I'm on a storefront page. How do I get from here onto the specific product page of the product I want to buy? Even as they've expanded out with add to carts directly on there, I think Amazon shoppers in general, are just a lot more used to and comfortable with shopping via a product detail page itself. So I think that's the number one main reason why sponsored brand video ads convert better than standard sponsored brand ads. But then I'll also add into this idea that the idea of having a moving product, it helps you, I think, in two capacities. I know it helps you in one. I believe it actually does help you in two capacities, which the one everybody can probably think of, I am doom scrolling on Amazon. Oh, something is moving. That is stopping my scroll. I am actually breaking my habit and it's grabbing my attention. That doesn't necessarily help with conversion rate, but that can absolutely help with scale. That's a good way that you can just try to get more traffic through a video versus a non-video ad. But the area that I think actually helps conversion is if you have the, albeit probably small percentage of people who are actually watching the video and not just pretty colors, let me click this. They're self-qualifying themselves. So if you actually have a good video to sort of showcase the value props of your product itself, assuming you're in a feature-oriented category, then when someone actually is clicking and going directly to your page, they're already going to be warmer and more interested in buying from you than the same exact listing from somebody else, but they don't know what the features are and they've clicked only from one primary image that, let's be honest, primary images don't do a great job of actually giving you like a feature benefit analysis. I think that qualification of traffic that you get through video ads is just something that can't be replicated across any other ad type.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And in all of the evaluations that we do, because evaluating sort of sponsor brands versus sponsor brands video and the ad types, that's actually part of the audits that we do on accounts. So we do a lot of analysis when it comes to that, not only in our own brands. And honestly, I know it's probably selfish. I think that's one of the reasons why I always enjoy our conversations, because I always find myself like nodding vigorously and adamantly agreeing with kind of everything which I like to be validated that like, all right, other smart people as well hold the same opinions. So that's always really, I don't know, comforting might be the right word. But let's say, okay, so we've landed on sponsor brands video ads. We know we're going to scale them. Do you want to walk through what makes the most sense to talk about next? Is it like going over a little bit how you initially get up the video ads and then reaching scale? Or is this like assuming they already have some video ads running and then they're looking to do more of it?
So I'll speak briefly on the video creative itself, because I think you're probably going to find the biggest lift in performance just comes from having a video versus not. Like obviously, I think there's even the slideshow videos that you can create for free directly on and has some video creation tools available. I think they're fine. I've found better performance from ones that feature like real live people. I think if you can afford to get live creative, I think that generally works better. That said, I've also seen plenty of instances in which people have, the crazy stories of I spent $50,000 on a fully produced video from Amazon and it bombed. It did not do anything better than the $200 video I had some guy on Fiverr make me. So I don't think that people should be holding a bar for the way you think of TV ads on small brand video.
Yeah.
I think that your bar really just needs to be, am I showcasing my product? Am I giving myself the ability to run these ads? And I would specifically just be thinking, why is somebody going to purchase from me? If it's price point, well, that's already going to be visible on the ad itself. If it's reviews, that's also going to be visible on the product itself. But if the answer is, oh, we do X that another competitor just does not do. We're bigger sizing. We use thicker materials, so we're built to last. We have extra pockets where women's clothes that actually have pockets. And who else has pockets? Nobody. Showcase that. that is one of the few areas where the videos themselves don't need to be long. I think 15 seconds, 25 seconds, a fine place to be. I know you can actually go as short as 7 seconds. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going with a 7 video. But outside of that, I think index more on showcase your product, showcase one of your core value props, and then just go live. Because the value that you're going to get from having the absolute best video, in my opinion, is going to be a lot smaller than the value you're getting from just having a good enough video. I always recommend to people, do not aim for good. Aim for good enough and get started.
Yes. No, I think that's a fantastic call out. And again, very much mirrors what we've seen as well. I think the one thing that we have observed that is helpful in the video are universe. I mean, it's like the one universal thing I think we've seen is beneficial, which is in sort of like Amazon's, like you said, they're free. It's kind of like a slideshow, but they do have a free tool that you can go out and you can have someone on your team templatize and build it. Is making sure that the product itself is visible within the first screen. I think it's something that we found, because I always tell everyone, like, hey, Amazon, even video, it's still very intent search based. And so we found if it's sort of like an opening lifestyle scene, there's a bit of uncertainty of like if the product really fits the description or what they're looking for. And so they may click on, like you said, ooh, shiny object, that looks interesting, but it may not be what they're looking for. So we've seen like much higher click-through rates and specifically higher conversion rates. If there's a very obvious like showcasing of, all right, you're looking for a running shoe, this is a running shoe.
I love that. It makes sense to how are people actually searching. You're 100% right. Ads are not trying to pull someone in that doesn't know what they want. We're explicitly trying to in the middle of their shopping experience. So you can leverage that to your benefit. We're just trying to show a product that fits your need.
Absolutely. So let's talk about scaling. I think this is the thing that most intrigued me about this topic that you wanted to cover. So let's say, all right, we have our video, we've gone over, we have a good enough video. We are running it on, I'm assuming, like you said, those high intent keywords is probably where you start. And then once you kind of have that rolling, how does one scale video ads?
So I think the most important factor when you're scaling your video ads is going to be creating your keyword lists or your targets that you're going after. I've done this in a few different ways, and I found one that does work a bit better than the rest. Assuming that, again, you followed my very first rule, which is max out what you're doing on sponsored products.
Yeah.
Better than any other keyword research tool I've used. The best results I've gotten on sponsored brand videos are ones where I just grow through my own search term report from the products. I filter out anything that has a competitor brand name in it. I filter out anything that has my brand name in it. And I filter out anything that, even if efficiency is great, if conversion rates are down, and you'll sort of know what a meaningful conversion rate is for your business. In some instances, our average conversion rate is 5%. And so I generally will stick around that average conversion rate, maybe offset it by like maybe, down relative 20% of that. So anything that has a 4% conversion rate or better. And so if you're talking in like a 10% category, I maybe go down to like an 8% conversion rate.
Right.
It is, you use a minimum conversion rate. And in most instances that I look at, I can find maybe it's a smaller product list and I have 15 terms that come out. In some instances I've done this and I've found over 500 terms that come out where individually you dedupe them, but you're finding individual search terms from your sponsored product campaigns that have converted at a reasonable efficiency. And you can even, take that one step further, minimum conversion sample sizes of, if you can swing it with a minimum of very small number, 3. If you can get 3 conversions per search term over, I might use a 30-day range, I might use a 60-day range. Honestly, more data is better here. But you understand within, hey, I know over the last 60 days, we have Christmas, and I don't want to account for Christmas versus what we've been seeing beforehand. Okay, that's fine. Then maybe you use the 30-day range. You want to make sure that your ratios that you're using make sense for your go forward, not just what happened to make sense in a hyper seasonal period. But so I'll generate this list of keywords and I'll do generally 2 things with them. I want to break out 2 different sponsored brand video campaigns, one for exact match, one for phrase match. And I'll actually start with the phrase match ones. Set it with relatively low bids. Again, low bids for whatever makes sense in your category. An example I might use, there's a specific account I'm thinking of where average cost per clicks might be around $1.50, $1.60. We start out around $1 bid for our phrase match sponsored brand videos. I'm going to really expand on this. I only ever am doing this for phrase match. I am never doing this for broad match. I have no rule. I refuse to use broad match keyword match types for any of my sponsored brand or sponsored brand video campaigns. But if you set this up at a phrase match, you are now, I treat this as a very similar to my catch-all campaigns in sponsored products, where, yeah, it's not truly an automatic campaign. You can set things up where you use an ASIN as it, and now that's functioning as an auto campaign. I've found this strategy ends up working better because it ends up just having a lot better curation of terms. When I've done that automatic approach for Amazon to decide what my targets are, it usually has just a lot lower quality terms. Even if I get the same terms in there, it just also is going to be supplemented with a lot of low quality terms. This strategy that I use, it generally, again, I'll asterisk everything, but it generally removes a lot of that bloat that you usually get in sponsored video and sponsored brand campaigns. And now you're able to start scaling on your purely bids, right? You're finding the specific terms that are working really well. You're going to increase those bids. You find the specific customer search terms that these phrase match groups are converting for you on a video component. And now you'll take that list, you'll break those out as exact match, and you're going to do the same exact form of keyword harvesting that you usually do in sponsored products. You're just taking that step to see, are these terms also scaling and converting as well on a video component rather than just only on sponsored products.
I love that. Okay, so couple questions, because I think you touched on most all of this. It's like, how do you start? Great. Look into your sponsored product ads, see what's working, make sure you're curating that. I love the idea of curating it also for conversion rates as well as the amount of conversions. So I think that's a really solid idea. And then we already talked about, that's one question everyone has is like, hey, what's the starting bid? And you're like, all right, it's relative to the account, which means relative to your own cost per click. So that's really helpful. Also, your conversion rates relative to your account, which is very helpful starting point. I guess my couple questions there would be in terms of what products you choose to advertise. I think we already talked about this in the beginning, how you were saying that video ads work well because they're directed to product pages. I know you can direct to store pages, but it sounds like you're saying, nope, we take the videos and we direct them directly to the product pages, which again, that's what we've observed has the highest conversion rate, which is kind of what we're after in these ads. But when it comes to all the complications of when you have a lot of variations on a listing, and if you're directing to a product page, you can only choose one product. Again, we're not talking about directing to store pages. You can choose multiple products if you want to do that. But we're saying, all right, we want to get the highest conversions. So we've got to pick one. When it comes to picking that, what's your criteria?
It's a good question. So usually my sponsored product campaigns are parent oriented. So I'll take all of them and break those out into the one parent campaign, or we'll do like 7 campaigns per parent, but neither here nor there. So from there, I tend to look at things from the perspective, let Amazon tell me what products are going to have the best click-through rates, are going to have the best the best conversion rates. And if we see anything that's a true outlier, turn it off. Usually, we're going to call it 8 times out of 10. You will see that the best product for ads is also just the best product for sales. Whatever individual child is selling the best, that's where you're going to naturally gravitate towards. There are some instances where I would want you to think about this just from the perspective, if the use case that I'm expecting someone to buy on really changes product by product. A great example of this might be bed sheets. The way people are actually searching for bed sheets is they're going to tell you, generally speaking, what size sheet they're looking for.
Yep.
And about half the time, they're going to tell you exactly what color they're looking for. You can then set that up where it's actually 1-to-1. If someone's searching for white queen sheet or gray king sheet, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Match that so that you're showing them the correct product. That also, especially in the world of video, I think can be a little overwhelming.
Yes.
Especially if I'm thinking about certain bedsheet products on Amazon where they might have 30 or 40 different colors because every shade of pink is a different shade of pink. And that's fine. I would probably want to be showing like the swatches in your video and then gravitate yourself, push back to your top seller. Again, if I know the bed sheet, it's going to be a white sheet, maybe a gray sheet, and then maybe navy or something. And so if you want to test out, you can test those out to see if the end detail page matters. At that point, I think it only matters in the sense of if somebody is searching for a color that you are now out of stock, you're probably not going to win that sale. But outside of that, I don't think it matters nearly as much if you send somebody onto the exact perfect variant on your landing page, as long as you have the variations they're looking for in stock. I might be giving too much credit, but I generally believe that Amazon customers at this point are trained with the idea of, I land on a product detail page, I'm going to see what variations they have, unless you have like 90 on the same variation page.
Right.
Okay, you're maybe making things a little too hard on people.
Yeah, I would also say, just to add another nuance into that, it might also come down to kind of what your main image looks like, which is going to change by category, because there are some categories, again, skirting the line of TOS, but you can get away with sort of having swatches or having some sort of main image that's going to demonstrate, hey, there's more options available of this product versus, I mean, some categories are pretty restrictive, so there's only so much you can get away with, but that might also play a factor. And I'd say that's good strategy, regardless if it's sponsored display campaigns, sponsored brand campaigns, or sponsored product campaigns. Is, you know, if somebody's searching for light blue queen size bed sheets, it's always going to be better if you can show up, you know, your light blue queen size bed sheet set. Now, again, as you've said, making those connections. Trust me, I've been down the rabbit hole to see if this can be automated in the new world of AI, potentially, eventually, I hope. But at this point, it is a very manual connection process. At least that's what we found. So again, I think maybe going back to how you're saying, like, okay, what keywords, curating your keyword set to go after, you know, where do you have a lot of conversions? Where do you have a lot of orders? And maybe be more intentional with the ones that, you know, probably have a little bit better performance. And then, you know, maybe everything else, you want to do the best you can. But again, there is an 80-20 aspect to that. I feel like we've gone through this strategy quite well. I know that there's going to be two other questions specifically I can think of that I know sellers are going to want to know. And the first one, is there a specific amount of keywords that you put into these campaigns? And then the second question is probably going to be around budgets. Is there like a starting budget? And then maybe slightly we can go into optimization.
Awesome on both questions. I'll start with the keyword side of it. I don't cap the number of keywords I put into my campaigns at a certain point. I think if you ever are running a campaign and you see 90% of your spend is running through one keyword and it's taking all of your budget and everything else is simply not able to spend, okay, you break things out. I think that's absolutely fine. But I'm not a big believer on the idea that upfront you need to limit the number of keywords you have per campaign. I think more often than not, the problems people run into around, keyword isn't spending because you aren't bidding enough on keyword X, and putting that keyword in its own campaign isn't necessarily going to stop you from underbidding the market. So from that perspective, I don't think it necessarily matters a huge amount. There are some organizational benefits to it, but you're not, as the advertiser, I'm speaking directly to the people building out these campaigns, do not feel shame if you are going to put in, 100 keywords in the same exact campaign. It just means you got to stay on top of it and make sure you're identifying when things are not spending so that you can go in and take action on it. So that was the first side. On the budget side of things, I'm a kind of risk-averse person. I usually start out my campaigns with, call it maybe $50 a day, just to get a taste. I want to see that these are actually converting at a reasonable level. And then if it is, I have a process where multiple times a week, we're evaluating what are the campaigns that are limited by budget, that have a good efficiency, that we can start to increase them. Some people I know do that literally on a daily basis, where you're going in and you're always taking advantage of every single opportunity to increase. I like sample sizes, so I'm generally more of a give me a couple consistent days of good efficiency, then I'm going to increase it. But I know like some people who might start out and who say like, hey, we're spending, again, I'm making up numbers, $2,000 a day just on this one product line. Shouldn't I be going in and giving that? Like, if I want to spend at least 10% of my budget here, I should give that $200. I say, what's the rush? Like, seriously, from my perspective, you don't ever usually, at least maybe not ever, but you don't usually want to start at your destination. I think 10% of budget going towards sponsored brand video is like a really, really great benchmark for you to strive to hit. I wouldn't try hitting that benchmark at launch. I want to grow into that. I have one account that's top of mind for me where we've been scaling out our sponsored brand videos recently. In January, we hit a 1% of sales benchmark coming from sponsored brand ads, or sponsored brand videos. In February, we got that up to 2.4%. And in March, Right now we're at 3.6%. That is stable. We've seen really strong efficiencies from this. And at least my client is satisfied with the growth. I'm really satisfied with the growth. So I think that that's what success can look like. I don't think that you should look at this as saying, oh, I'm spending nothing on sponsored brand video ads right now. If I'm not spending at least 10% of my budget here of the month, then something's gone wrong. That's just not how I look at it.
Yeah. And I think that's a fantastic call out, because with anything, introducing, new sponsor brands video, even if you find keywords, say you're migrating search terms and sponsored product ads or anything, you're going off, like you started off in the beginning, the data that we have the most certainty that we possibly can that it is going to work. And yet it's still going to be a test. So it sounds like what you're saying, all right, this is a test. I'm not really comfortable. And to be honest, I'm 100% with you here. Like, I'm not really comfortable in saying, all right, we must spend this much without really knowing, like you said, the efficiencies. Because what happens if you launch this and, maybe conversion rates aren't as high due to what I targeted, or maybe my video isn't as solid as I thought it was, or, in certain categories, video creatives are more important than others. So maybe you got up good enough and then the conversion rate isn't high enough. And then, oops, you just spent, like you said, 10% of your budget on something that doesn't really have good efficiencies, because all of these things are like, put out your best logical understanding of what to do next, which I appreciate you kind of like laying out how to start that groundwork, very detailed, and then we see what works. And I'm assuming just one last probably tidbit of information when it comes to the optimizations, probably mostly on the bid level, or maybe also on, if you're doing the phrase match campaigns, I'm assuming there's some sort of negative keyword aspect to it. Can you just carry over your methodologies or things that you're doing in sponsored product ads? Like, if it's working in the account to optimize sponsored product ads, do you just sort of replicate that in sponsored brand ads, or are you adjusting at all?
That's a really, really good question. I think the easiest way for me to say this is 99% of it is just whatever I would be doing if this was a sponsored product campaign, I'm treating it the same as a sponsored brand campaign. I am always going to be a little cautious of, like, if I find a term that is converting well for me on sponsored brands, I'm going to bring that over to sponsored products if for whatever reason it's missing. I have so much confidence that sponsored products is always going to be successful for me if a term itself can be successful, versus on the sponsored brand side, I don't have that same implicit level of trust. I don't think that things are always going to be scaling. That's why when I'm thinking of my harvesting sample sizes, I only want to, if I'm harvesting out to a more aggressive, I call them converting keyword campaigns. If I'm harvesting those out for sponsored brand videos, I'm going to do so because this is actually converted from a sponsored brand video campaign, not because I've seen it convert on other campaigns outside. The other thing that makes it just a little bit different is because I'm only ever using the one child that I can direct things back to. That's where you have to be extra cautious of your inventory levels. I think, I have things set up on a sponsored product side where we'll generally put all of the children out there unless something just converts really, really poorly. And then if something is running out of inventory, you can turn that off, but you're still then running the entire base campaign. Yeah. Have that luxury with sponsored brand videos. And so that's the one thing that I'll be, again, just a little bit more cautious of when I'm trying to, I'd say it's just real-time optimization. I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm using a smaller product that then goes out of stock, and now I lose effectively all of my base bid level and all of the ad history because the product itself is out of stock. Yeah, no, I think that is a fantastic call out, and probably one to end on. One last thing that I'm going to throw this in here because one last thing I thought of. So if we're not being cautious about how many keywords we're putting into the campaign, and like you said, there's a scenario in which, like, you run that analysis on some lots of product ads and you're like, okay, I only have like 3 keywords that fit this criteria. And then on the opposite end, like you said, you had 500 keywords that fit that criteria. When it comes to that migration of the search terms and, like, building out those sponsor brands video campaigns based on the keywords that you've identified, if you end up with like 500 keywords, are you choosing to test all of them? Is a scenario where you might sort of pick maybe the cream of the crop, or have you noticed, like, well, if I put those all, if 500, there's probably a little extreme in maybe in one campaign, but like if I put those all in one campaign, at least I'm capping with budgets so I know what my test spend is? It's a really, really good question. Usually when I end up seeing a lot of terms in there, like the 500, then I can just say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to be even more selective when it comes to I say like, hey, you're going to feel really good if you at least have a sample size of 3 orders per. If on 3 orders per you're getting 500, then I can start to see, okay, well, what if I increase that up to like just any term that is converting at least 10 times a month for me, and you're going to get a lot bigger needle movers, especially because again, you're trying to set this up at a phrase match to then capture things. A lot of my intent is cast a wide net and then optimize actively from there based on the net that you're casting. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't also be casting that targeted net. So the more terms you have, the more you should feel comfortable in saying, I can either give myself a higher bound for minimum conversions or even a higher bound for minimum conversion rate. If again, we're saying your conversion rate is maybe you're able to go down 20% below it, maybe you actually stick right at that minimum average conversion rate, or go a little bit above. I would probably, if I'm making a recommendation to people, I would index more on volume rather than pure conversion rate, because I think I've often found that some of my best, highest volume terms, in fact, are just converting right around the average. That's how averages work. Whatever's doing the most volume, that's going to really that's going to pull the average in towards it. And I don't want to ever lose a high needle moving term in exchange for a term that's probably going to be a lot less of a needle mover, but at a better rate.
Yeah. Quick clarification, when you're saying one that's a high needle mover, is that one that you're looking at the order volumes on to determine that?
Yeah. So I'm thinking needle moving. I'm just like, what is actually leading to more sales and therefore more in my clients' pockets?
Awesome. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate it. I keep telling everyone who's coming on, I'm literally just like stealing everyone's homework, and I'm grateful to have great friends who are willing to share sort of their learnings and what there is working right now, specifically in their accounts, because things change all the time. So it's fantastic to have these like deep dive conversations on like some very specific topics. And I've personally very much enjoyed this. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, they're like, that sounds fantastic, I would love to reach out, learn more, potentially work with you, where is the best place to get a hold of you?
I'm going to give you 2 places. One, igppc.com. Honestly, if you're on any of those pages, you're going to see a big contact form up in the top right. And if you put in Junglr in the comment section for it, then we'll know you came from this podcast and you want to talk to me. The second location is my LinkedIn, linkedin.com/Mike Frekey, Frekey. I'm fairly active over there. I try to post a couple times a week. Recently, I've been very big into the glitch finding. So anytime Amazon is breaking itself, I like to let people know, no, you are not crazy. This is not only happening to you. This is happening to many, many other people. So if you're interested in keeping up with Amazon glitches, I'm your guy too.
Awesome. And we'll put all of those links in the description. So if you want to reach out to Mike, definitely recommend doing so. And I really, really appreciate it. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.